It's finally here, the day we've all been anxiously waiting for, April 1st, carbon tax increase day. Let's break down all the different things that are happening today. So today we'll see an increase of 3.3 cents for gas per liter, 4.01 cents for diesel, and 2.3 cents per liter on propane. And while this might not seem like a lot, once you start taxing fuel on every single thing that goes on society, it is catastrophic, as we've already seen, because the carbon tax is ruining Canada. What we've got here is an impact of carbon tax on fuel in Canada costs 2021 and 2030. If you're driving a Ford F-150, things are not looking good. This is, essentially 3 years ago. So we're a little bit higher than this now. Still a long ways to go. Things are just going to get more expensive with Justin Trudeau at the helm, ruining Canada. What else is happening on April 1st here? Well, there's a beer tax. It was 4.7%. The beer industry fought back against this, and they got it reduced to 2%, but still a 2% increase. We've also got pay raises for Justin Trudeau and his cronies. All members of parliament, to be fair, are getting pay raises. You got pre-pandemic, an MP was making $178,900. And today that's an increase of $23,800 up to $202,700. So the backbenchers getting $200,000. Minister was going from $287,400 up to $299,000, basically $300,000. And finally, the man who shouldn't have been born, Justin Trudeau, that filthy pig. Okay, I apologize. I shouldn't have said that. That's rude to pigs. Justin Trudeau is getting an increase from his current salary of $389,200 up to $405,400, making him the second highest paid prime minister on planet Earth. Imagine paying a man $400,000 to destroy the lives of 41 million people. Unbelievable. Today we've got numerous things talking about the carbon tax. We've got Wab Kinew here of Manitoba on this CBC interview.
Manitoba is a really strong case to make that we're going to hit net zero without a consumer-facing carbon tax. And as a result, I don't think that that's needed here in Manitoba. And by the way, January 1st, we lifted the tax on gasoline. Yeah. It was 14 cents a liter. We brought it to zero. And I think one of the things we got to do in terms of fighting climate change is we can't lose the blue collar. We can't lose the working class, the middle class. And I think governments like ours that are committed to solving the climate crisis, at least doing our part, we have to show that we're going to be flexible, we're going to keep life affordable, and we're going to move forward in a way that keeps working class, middle class Manitobans and Canadians moving forward in a direction that's towards a clean, safe, and healthy environment.
Okay, so just so I can better understand your position, you don't think that there should be an individual price on carbon, is what I'm taking from this. Are you then planning to go to Ottawa and make the case that what you have is going to meet the same goals that they have and will be enough on its own? Like, what is the plan here?
Yeah, no, actually, we've been making that case since taking office. I think what separates us from previous administrations in Manitoba, who were just trying to make the backward-facing argument that we've already done a lot on the climate in Manitoba, with our Manitoba hydro grid as one example, is that we brought in new measures with the budget. And so the fact that we're sharing our budget publicly on April 2nd, I think really strengthens the case and allows us to talk to the federal government and say, look, with these measures in terms of electrifying transportation and converting to ground source heat pumps for homes and businesses, and these other incentives that we're putting into place, Manitoba has a really credible path to net zero. And we don't think that the backstop is needed when it comes to that consumer carbon tax. Yeah,
so just, and I'll move on to some other topics, but of course that would mean that people wouldn't get the rebate then, because you would have your own plan and you'd be putting in place your own measures. Do you think that would be acceptable to Manitobans to no longer get the carbon rebate?
Yeah, I think the backstop is not needed in our province, and we'd be happy to make that case to Manitobans.
So pushing the whole carbon rebate, please. We've heard enough of that crap. No one wants your stupid rebate. We don't get rebates in BC. The whole thing is garbage. Next up, we've got Vasi Capellos here interviewing Danielle Smith. This is... sometimes we've got Vasi here, who's a real bulldog and an honest journalist, and this is very much the opposite, where she seemed to get a memo from the Trudeau Liberal government, with maybe a briefcase of cash, or her higher-ups forcing to fire her, whatever the case be, who knows? But she's definitely not on Canadian side with this interview.
I know you appeared before committee this week to voice your opposition to that upcoming hike in the carbon tax. You argued it was immoral to levy the tax when Albertans are struggling with a cost of living crisis. Yet the provincial fuel tax is going up on the same day by 4 cents. How can you ask the federal government to provide relief to Albertans when you're not willing to?
Well, part of it is that we've given $7 billion of relief over the past 2 years to try to compensate for what we've been seeing at the federal level. And we have a program that's in place so that as soon as oil prices get high again, if they go over $90, then the gas tax would come completely off. When it's below $80, it comes back on. And so we're watching prices very closely. I told the committee I'd be more than happy if the federal government did the same thing, because with their carbon tax, their fuel tax, and the GST, they charge 35 cents on every tank of gas. And if they took the same approach that they would eliminate it when gas prices got too high, then we probably wouldn't have any complaint.
What I gather from that, though, is that you see there to be a purpose in the fuel tax you've applied, insofar as that money goes to pay for roads. From what the federal government says, they too see a purpose in levying the carbon tax, not to be punitive, but to affect behavior over the long term in order to reach this country's emissions targets. Isn't that valid?
It's so bogus. The whole affect people's habits. They're just trying to phase us out of existence. That's what it is. It's human extermination. They know everyone has to use their cars to go do things. They want everyone to go buy a $60,000 EV, yet they don't have electrical infrastructure to charge EVs at that level. It's bogus. This is like absolutely bogus.
Well, I guess I need to see some evidence of that. You had the Environment Minister, Stephen Guilbeault, said that he wasn't anticipating the carbon tax to make a difference until 2060. And so when you think about what behaviors are you trying to incent, well, part of it is you're trying to get people to buy zero emissions vehicles, which cost $60,000. You're trying to get them to change out their home heating systems, which can cost $10,000 to $20,000. And you're trying to get them to make really expensive changes to renovate their homes. And I just don't know that giving people a couple $100 every quarter is going to incentivize that. There's other ways to be able to get those kind of changes. But this looks like just a shell game. It's a matter of taking money away, giving some of it back, and pretending you're doing something about the environment. I think most people see through it.
I do understand raising the question because they hadn't yet provided a lot of evidence around how effective is this particular measure. But there is recently some outside evidence through the Canadian Climate Institute that says the consumer portion of the carbon tax by 2030 will be worth a reduction in emissions of about 8 to 9% of the total. That's not nothing. What do you propose to displace that?
Okay, before she answers that, the Canadian Climate Institute, I already brought this up a couple of videos ago. It's funded by the Canadian government with Stephen Guilbeault in charge of this. That's paid off funding. As far as I'm concerned, whatever research they're doing is dog crap research. That's like the sugar industry for decades, doing research on sugar, the effects of sugar, and they do research to get the results they want. There's tons of corrupt research. It's easy to get researchers to find the results that they want. You eat sugar, oh yeah, you get healthy, you lose weight, you get strong, you're everything gets better. When really quite opposite is the truth. If you're eating a bunch of refined sugar, obviously we know it's all the opposite. You get fat, you get sick. It's not good for you. It's the same thing. Guilbeault is using our dollars to pay off this Climate Institute to make research that is favorable to them. Period.
Well, I can tell you what we are seeing displace that. There are some programs the federal government has and has partnered with us that do seem to be working. For instance, the carbon capture utilization and storage tax credit. We've announced ours. We think the federal government will be putting some structure around those very soon. That has resulted in Pathways, which is our bitumen producers, talking about creating a $16.5 billion carbon capture trunk line. We have partnered with the Strategic Investment Fund, which is under the portfolio of Francois-Philippe Champagne, on Dow Chemicals net zero petrochemical plant, Air Products net zero hydrogen, Heidelberg's net zero cement, Interpipeline on their ammonia project. Those are projects that are going to be net zero immediately after they're done. And I don't think that factors into anyone's modeling. But those are the kind of things that we need to do if we're going to make effective reductions in major industrial emissions.
The issue, though, is that those don't come for free for taxpayers. You're proposing over the next decade, for example, to spend between $3.2 and $5.3 billion of taxpayer money to fuel the development of carbon capture, for example, in your province. That's not nothing either. That costs taxpayers as well.
Well, I would say that there's a lot of industry making money, and it allows them to keep more of what they earn to be able to invest in these emissions reductions. That's, I think, a sensible way of doing it. when we've looked at our ACIP program, that's our program for petrochemical incentives, we've determined that has a payoff at about 10 years with the extra taxes that those companies will end up paying. So those are the kind of approaches that we think are going to make sense, as opposed to putting an immediate burden on people who can least afford to pay it, those who are seniors, those who are low income. That's where we believe that the focus should be on the industrial emissions reduction, pricing that out, and making sure that we're holding those companies to account. But I think it's just frustrating for people to continue to see a tax when the alternatives just simply aren't available to them.
Let's not forget the fact that, like, where's the tax on private jets? Where's the tax on, you know what I mean? There's a whole bunch of things, and it's not hardworking Canadians that are what this country is, what everything's paid for is by us. Where, like, you know what I mean? Why are they not banning, private jets or whatever? Obviously, that affects Justin Trudeau. He would never do that. It's the 1%, like that one article I showed a couple of videos ago. The 1% is responsible for 66% of the pollution, the pollution from individuals in Canada. This is all bogus dog crap.
Is it, though, accurate to say that the industrial side of things will be more effective or less costly, I should say, for Albertans or for Canadians writ large? Again, those come with a very specific cost. It's just not as naked as the carbon tax. And when you talk about particularly impacting lower income and older Albertans or again, writ large Canadians, I mean, all the calculations the Parliamentary Budget Officer have done show that in those income brackets, in fact, they are getting more money back than they're paying in.
Vassy, please. That's dog crap. We all know that's dog crap. Somebody came in like tapped on your shoulders like, Vassy, you got to push Trudeau's crap today. Like, what's going on here?
Well, I would say the only way we're going to make significant emissions reduction is at the industrial level. Because if Albertans are going to have a different type of fuel, maybe it's hydrogen, you need to build up the infrastructure for that. You need to be able to create the hydrogen, transport it, change out your pipeline system.
But do you have evidence that the changes you're going to make, for example, more specifically, because you're talking more broadly, more specifically around carbon capture, are going to do what you said? Are you sure you're going to get value for taxpayer money there?
Well, look, we invested $1 billion 10 years ago to develop this Shell Quest project, and already it has captured 11.5 megatons of emissions. I know that over in Saskatchewan, they have a similar type of emissions reduction project, capture project, that has captured 40 megatons of emissions. We can align to a target of 2050. Not only do I think we can achieve that, I think because I know our industry so well, they'll strive to do it even faster. But if you put an arbitrary limit in place that reduces production, reduces your revenues, you're going to impair the ability to invest in those kinds of projects. And I think that's self-defeating.
Do you have evidence to support the idea or the characterization you're using that it's arbitrary? Because the federal government is aligning its targets with much of the rest of the world that has signed on to agreements, for example, through the UN about what the overall targets are by 2030, by 2035, and by 2050. And what they talk about is often, reaching those targets in order to stop the warming that's happening. That is, increasing the frequency with which we are seeing the impacts of climate change. So fires, let's say, man-made in many instances, but taking up a wider swath of land that Albertans will be very familiar with and happening more frequently. In your last budget, expenses are up $2.1 billion from the previous year, largely due to $2.9 billion earmarked to deal with droughts, wildfires, and floods. There is a cost of inaction around climate change as well, and I think the federal government would argue that means that their their targets are not arbitrary.
Well, I guess I would say, is paying a carbon tax at the pump going to stop the fires in our province? And the answer is no. What stops the fires is, number one, education, because 60% of them are human caused. Number two, building fire breaks so that we can protect communities. Number three, investing in water bomb equipment like de Havilland so that we can fight fires. Number four, sharing resources with the rest of the country through the Canadian Forest Fire Association. So I think the cause and effect are very different. You have to be able to deal with crises as they happen. So I'm watching to see, with some evidence, that the carbon tax is changing behavior. I just haven't seen it yet.
But the point is for it to do so over a long period of time, not immediately, right? That's the point of incentivizing the behaviors. And to separate the idea that reducing emissions does mitigate the impact of climate change from fighting fires. Of course, you have to do adaptation, as we were discussing, but that becomes more expensive if they happen more frequently. And though they are human caused, the frequency and the scope of them are a direct impact of climate change?
We will.
How is the frequency of someone starting a fire, some bonehead going out and starting a forest fire, related to climate change? That's ridiculous. It's just put incentives. If you start a forest fire, it's 25 years in jail. Problem solved. Start putting up some cameras around random places, catch these people and throw them in jail. This is not rocket science.
But we will always have fires. We will always have floods. We will always have ice storms. And the job of government is to make sure that we mitigate, that we are prepared for when they happen, and that we have the resources available to do it. I can't, you have to make sure that you're budgeting for both of those things. And so that's why we have a plan to be carbon neutral by 2050. But I just don't think that we punish people in the meantime. Let's build out the hydrogen infrastructure, build out the electrical infrastructure, make sure that we've got enough vehicles available for people to buy. And then we can start seeing the consumers change their behavior. But in the meantime, it really is just an extra tax.
I do understand the lack of alternatives, certainly, and those are pertinent questions for the federal government. But it sounds to me like you're delineating between fires happening and floods happening and mitigating the impacts of climate change. Do you not see them as the same thing?
Well, I guess what I don't see is that carbon tax is having an immediate impact on my pressing need each year to prepare for fires. Every year I'm going to need to prepare for fires. We've got an aging forest infrastructure. Our trees end up dying at about 100 years old. So we've got an aging forest infrastructure. We had the El Nino effect this year. We had a devastating fire season last year. It still means that I've got to pay for that. I can't just hope that a carbon tax is going to stop fires from burning in my province. We've got to be able to do both. And we have to be able to do both on a timescale that makes sense. So I'm going to be planning for fires this year. We hope that they're not devastating. And over the course of the next 25 years, we'll be reducing emissions by finding different alternatives, using innovation, and making sure that we get to carbon neutral by 2050. But I just don't think when we're in the middle of this affordability crisis, that increasing the cost of everything for individuals when they can't avoid those costs, I just don't think that's fair. I don't think it's right.
It's quite simple. If you catch someone starting a forest fire near a community that displaces a lot of people and causes a ton of damage, it's 25 years in jail. C'est la vie. Why is this so hard? I don't understand why we don't have strict penalties for people doing stupid things. And I have no idea what's going on with Vassie. She's sitting there now with her notes. It's like, okay, I'm going to be fired unless I, read off the thing. Make sure people know they get more money back than they pay. Like these stupid notes, the Coles notes from the Trudeau Liberals. It's pathetic. So what's happening today? Well, I'm filming this the night before. So obviously more things will be breaking as the day happens. But we've got... we're gonna have to turn that music off, but basically, yeah, we've got people lining up already. This is Alberta, 9 p.m. Right now, as I'm filming this the night before, yeah, people lined up. Everyone's getting ready to protest. Big protests lining up everywhere. So check the Facebook groups. There's different groups for different areas if you want to be involved. One in absolutely every single province and numerous per province. So this is going to be wild. And where is Justin Trudeau during all of this? This is very interesting. Well, it's Daisy Meady's got this clip here, and it seems Justin Trudeau's plane is getting ready to take off and leave somewhere. That dirty rat, Trudeau.
Ottawa International Airport, and there in the distance is Trudeau's new plane, and it looks like it's getting prepped. It's outside the terminal. Who wants to make a wager that Trudeau has no intention of being in Ottawa tomorrow during the tax protest April 1st? There's nothing yet on his itinerary saying where he's going to be Monday, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's planning on getting out of town.
Seriously, that man is just the worst Canadian ever. I'm not surprised, though. Trudeau is an absolute coward and a loser. Of course he's going to take off. He's probably going to be in Tofino if he is. I'll go down there and find him on the beach or find him in the town and heckle him myself. Now, speaking of heckling, we've got this Karima lawyer. She's always going around and getting tons of great clips of what's going on in Toronto. This one's pretty wild. She gets basically kind of chased down by the Palestine protesters.
Okay? Don't touch her.
Don't touch him either. Leave our neighborhood.
Don't touch her, okay?
Don't touch
her.
Don't touch her. Excuse me? Let go of my flag. Look. Stop sticking your stuff in his face. He shouldn't be here. We don't want you here. No, we don't want you here. She claims that she's half Palestinian.
Oh, she's half Palestinian.
Yeah, and I had the misfortune of being born here. What do you want from me?
You want Palestine for coffee?
You're on the wrong side, clearly. You're
I don't touch you.
Excuse me.
Go ahead, talk to him. I'm not poking you right now, but I will.
Get this out of my face. You're creating an issue.
Imagine moving to a country and being welcomed in and then telling people to get out. Oh, that's rich. That's real rich. These people need to be deported. This type of bullying doesn't help their cause. Exactly. You know, I'm just telling any of you people are protesting, that pisses me off seeing that. It's like, we break our backs paying taxes. You get let into the country and then you do that. It's just like, don't. Just don't. And I know obviously those couple people don't represent all the Palestinians. They're just a couple boneheads. We got another quick story here of cars being stolen in Toronto now just being listed on Facebook Marketplace for a quarter of their value. Like, this is just outrageous.
These criminals do not give a care in the world about the cops. They're just putting the stolen vehicles on Facebook Marketplace. Here's a 2021 Escalade V for 28,000 Canadian dollars. Seller Man is selling this in Mississauga, Ontario. Don't ask any questions about this car. It's imported. Don't worry about that stuff. 28,000 Canadian dollars, or best offer, this Escalade V has 7,000 kilometers on the vehicle. This is so hilarious. This just shows you they do not care at all about the government, the police, nothing. This is so brazen that it's all over Facebook Marketplace. This is not the only one. There are others. That is absolutely insane. I can't believe that this is...
Just seriously, somebody contact this person and tie him up and bring him down to the jail. Like, enough's enough. This should not be hard. Why is this so hard? So that's where we're going to end today's video. Be sure to subscribe here for more updates, more content, more fighting for the truth, fighting for Canadians. We've got a lot going on here. I'll keep you guys updated, keep you guys posted what happens here on carbon tax. April 1st, Justin Trudeau fleeing the country. I got to say, if we can track him down and know where he is, let's do it. We got to keep tabs on this piece of garbage, the rat, just trying to slither his way out of Ottawa. I think he's going to go hide off in Tofino somewhere, or he might go hide off to one of his vacation homes. Thanks for watching the end of the video. Be sure to subscribe and turn on the notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.